Spiritual awakening is a journey, one that takes us through layers of our being, peeling back the illusions that we've carried for lifetimes. But as with any journey, the first step is often the hardest. And this first step is, at its core, about breaking free from the illusion of who we think we are. For most of us, we've spent our lives identifying with our thoughts, our bodies, our circumstances, and the roles we play in the world. We believe that the self is this collection of experiences, memories, and the persona we've built. But what if I told you that this is only the surface, that this identity you cling to is just a mask? You see, the first milestone to spiritual awakening begins with a simple but profound question. Who am I really? Sit with that question for a moment, let it sink in. Ask yourself, am I my thoughts, my emotions, my body, my career, my relationships? If you strip all of that away, what remains? This question is not meant to be answered quickly or intellectually. It's a doorway to that inner world, a key to unlocking the deepest truth of your being. Breaking free from the illusion of self is a process of unlearning. We've been conditioned from the moment we were born to believe that we are separate individuals, navigating a world of other separate beings. This conditioning runs deep. It's in our families, our schools, our media, and even our spiritual systems. It's no wonder then that we have come to believe this story so strongly. But here's the first piece of wisdom on this path. You are not separate from life. You are life itself.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The moment you begin to understand this, even on a conceptual level, you've taken a crucial step toward awakening. But understanding it isn't enough. You have to experience it. And that's where the real work begins. In our daily lives, we are constantly bombarded with distractions, thoughts, emotions, sensory input, and the endless stream of external stimuli. These distractions keep us locked in the illusion of separation. So how do we break free? The answer lies in awareness, and this is where meditation, mindfulness, or any practice of self-reflection becomes essential. When you sit in stillness, when you observe your thoughts without attaching to them, something miraculous happens. You start to realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. This might sound simple, but is one of the most profound shifts you can experience. Suddenly, the mind, which has been running the show for so long, loses its grip. You begin to see that the mind is just a tool, not the master. But here's the deeper question. If you are not your thoughts, then who are you? This is where many people get stuck, because the mind desperately wants to answer. It wants a definition, a label, something to grasp onto. But the truth is, you can't define who you are. The moment you try to put it into words, you're limiting it. You are beyond the mind, beyond language, beyond form. You are the awareness in which all experiences arise. Now let's take this a step further. Once you start to disidentify with your thoughts, you'll begin to see that the same is true for your emotions. We often say, "I am angry" or "I am sad," as if these emotions define us. But just like thoughts, emotions are fleeting. They arise, they peak, and then they dissolve. If you watch them closely, you'll see that they are simply energy moving through you. They do not define who you are. You are the space in which these emotions arise and fall away. This realization can be incredibly liberating. Imagine living your life without being so caught up in the waves of emotion, without constantly being pulled in different directions by your thoughts. Imagine being anchored in the stillness of your true nature, watching the drama of life unfold without getting lost in it. This is the beginning of spiritual freedom. But here's the paradox. The more you detach from the mind and emotions, the more present you become. You might think that detaching means becoming cold or aloof, but it's the opposite. When you no longer identify with the mind, you start to live in the present moment fully. You stop projecting into the future or dwelling on the past. You begin to experience life as it is, not as you think it should be. And in that presence, you find a deep sense of peace. But peace is just the tip of the iceberg. As you continue to disidentify with the mind and emotions, something even more profound begins to emerge, the realization that you are not separate from the world around you. This is where the illusion of separation starts to dissolve. You begin to see that the boundaries you thought existed between you and the world were never real. They were constructs of the mind. Here's a question to ponder. If there is no separation between you and the world, then what is the nature of reality itself? This is where we start to touch on the deeper mysteries of existence. As the illusion of the individual self begins to fade, you start to sense that everything is interconnected. You are not a separate being navigating a world of separate objects. You are the awareness in which the entire universe arises. This is not just a philosophical idea. It's a living experience. And once you taste it, even for a moment, your life is never the same. But this is just the beginning. The first milestone in spiritual awakening is breaking free from the illusion of self. It's realizing that you are not the mind, not the emotions, not the body. You are the awareness behind it all. But this realization, while profound, is not the end. It's the doorway. Once you step through it, the real journey begins. Are you ready to continue? Ask yourself, what lies beyond the illusion of self? What is the true nature of existence? These are the questions that will guide you as we move deeper into the next milestone of spiritual awakening. Now that we've begun to break free from the illusion of self, the next major milestone on the path to spiritual awakening is understanding the dance of duality. This is where things get really interesting, because while the realization that you are not your thoughts, emotions, or body is liberating, it opens up an entirely new set of challenges and opportunities for growth. You see, as we awaken, we begin to see the world from a higher perspective, but we're still living in a world of duality. We are still human beings having human experiences, and in this world, everything exists in pairs: light and dark, good and bad, joy and sorrow, life and death. The mind loves to categorize everything into these dualities because it helps to make sense of the world. But as you awaken further, you start to realize that these dualities are also illusions. They are two sides of the same coin, and true spiritual awakening means transcending this dualistic thinking. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we can transcend duality, we must first deeply understand it. And that begins with recognizing the light and shadow within ourselves. For most of us, we've spent our lives trying to embrace the light, our best qualities, our virtues, our strengths, while rejecting or suppressing our shadow, the parts of ourselves that we deem unworthy, shameful, or negative. But here's the truth: you cannot fully awaken without embracing both the light and the shadow within you. This is a hard truth for many people because we've been conditioned to believe that spiritual awakening is all about love, light, and positivity. And while those things are certainly part of the journey, they are only half of the equation. The other half, the shadow, is equally important. The shadow represents all the parts of yourself that you've denied or disowned. It's the anger, the fear, the jealousy, the pain that you've pushed down because you believed they were unworthy or unacceptable. But here's the thing: your shadow is not something to be feared or suppressed. It is a source of immense power and wisdom. So, the next step on this journey is to face your shadow, to bring it into the light of your awareness. This can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it is necessary. You cannot fully awaken until you've integrated all parts of yourself, both the light and the dark. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It holds the keys to your deepest healing and transformation. Let me ask you a question. What parts of yourself have you been avoiding? What emotions, thoughts, or memories are you afraid to face? These are the places where your greatest growth lies. The more you resist these aspects of yourself, the more power they have over you. But when you bring them into the light, when you face them with compassion and understanding, they begin to lose their hold on you. One of the most powerful practices for integrating the shadow is self-inquiry. Whenever you notice a negative emotion or reaction arising within you, instead of pushing it away, ask yourself, where is this coming from? What part of me is feeling this way? What is this emotion trying to teach me? In doing this, you begin to see that these emotions are not something to be feared or rejected. They are simply energy moving through you, and they are there to show you where you are still holding on to unresolved pain or unhealed wounds. But here's the deeper wisdom. Your shadow is not just personal, it's collective. Just as you have your own individual shadow, humanity as a whole has a collective shadow. This collective shadow is made up of all the pain, suffering, and fear that we as a species have not yet healed. And just as you must face your own shadow to awaken, humanity must face its collective shadow to evolve. This is why spiritual awakening is not just about you. It's about the awakening of the entire planet. As you heal your own shadow, you are contributing to the healing of the collective. Now, let's go a bit deeper. As you begin to integrate your shadow, you will start to see that the dualities you once believed in, light and dark, good and bad, begin to dissolve. You realize that they are not separate forces battling for control. They are two expressions of the same energy. Just as day turns into night and night turns into day, the light and shadow within you are constantly flowing, constantly shifting. And when you stop resisting this flow, you begin to experience a sense of wholeness and unity that goes beyond duality. This is where many people on the spiritual path get stuck. They believe that awakening means getting rid of the shadow, transcending all negative emotions, and living in a constant state of bliss. But this is a misunderstanding. True spiritual awakening is about embracing all aspects of existence, not just the pleasant ones. It's about seeing that the shadow is just as sacred as the light. It is the womb of creation. It is where all transformation begins. Think about the seed buried deep in the soil. In the darkness, it begins to grow. It pushes through the earth, reaching for the light. Without the darkness, there would be no growth. The same is true for you. Without the shadow, without the challenges, the pain, and the suffering, there would be no opportunity for transformation. This is why embracing the shadow is so crucial on the path to awakening. It is in the darkness that you find your true strength. But here's where it gets even more profound. As you integrate your shadow, you begin to see that the people and situations in your life that trigger you, the ones that bring up anger, fear, or pain, are actually mirrors, reflecting back the parts of yourself that you have not yet fully embraced. This is a deep teaching. The world is your mirror. Every conflict, every challenge, every person who pushes your buttons is showing you something about yourself that is asking to be healed. So, the next time you find yourself in conflict with someone or feeling triggered by a situation, instead of reacting, take a step back and ask yourself, what is this situation showing me about myself? What part of my shadow is being reflected here? This is not easy work. It requires a great deal of humility and self-honesty. But the rewards are immense. The more you integrate your shadow, the more peace and clarity you will experience. You will stop being triggered by external events because you will have healed the internal wounds that those events were reflecting. And this brings us to the deeper truth. The external world is a reflection of your internal state. As within, so without. The more you heal and integrate your shadow, the more harmony you will experience in your external life. The more light you bring into your own being, the the more light you will see in the world around you. This is the power of spiritual awakening. It doesn't just transform your inner world, it transforms your entire reality. Are you ready to continue? Reflect on this. What if everything in your life, both the light and the shadow, is happening for your awakening? What if the challenges you face are not obstacles, but opportunities for growth? This is the question that will guide you as we move into the next milestone on the path to spiritual awakening. As we move deeper into the journey of spiritual awakening, we come to a critical milestone, one that many people struggle with, often without even realizing it. This is the moment where we confront the ego, that part of us that insists on being in control, on maintaining the illusion of separation and individuality. Up until this point, we've talked about breaking free from the illusion of self, and we've explored the dance of duality, including the integration of both light and shadow. But even as we gain these insights, the ego remains, subtly holding onto power, whispering in the background, "I am in control. I must protect myself. I must survive." But here's the deeper truth. The ego cannot survive the full awakening of consciousness, and the ego knows this. That's why at this stage of the journey, it often puts up its final and most intense resistance. The ego, which is essentially a construct of the mind, a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and identities, has been running the show for most of your life. It's the part of you that says, "I am separate, I am this body, I am this body." And for many of us, it feels like we are the ego. But you are not your ego. You are the awareness behind the ego. And this awareness is infinite, timeless, and free. The challenge here is that the ego doesn't want to give up its illusion of control. It spent your entire life building walls of separation, telling you stories about who you are and what the world is like. It feeds off fear, attachment, and the need for validation. And as you begin to wake up to the deeper truth of who you are, the ego senses its own dissolution. It becomes threatened and it fights back. This is where many people experience what is often called the dark night of the soul, a period of deep inner turmoil, confusion, and fear. But here's the wisdom. The dark night of the soul is not a sign that something is going wrong. It's a sign that something is going right. It's a sign that the ego is being dismantled, that the old structures of identity are crumbling, making way for the light of your true self to shine through. This process can feel like a kind of death because, in a sense, it is. It's the death of the ego's grip on your consciousness. But while the ego sees this as terrifying, your higher self knows that this is the path to true freedom. So, how do we navigate this stage of the journey? How do we surrender the ego's control and allow our true nature to emerge? The key is in surrender. And surrender, in the spiritual sense, is not about giving up or being passive. It's about letting go of the need to control everything. It's about trusting in the flow of life, in the intelligence of the universe, and in your own higher self. The ego clings tightly because it believes it must protect you, that if it doesn't hold on, something terrible will happen. But the irony is that true safety, true peace, only comes when you let go. Ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What am I afraid to release? These are powerful questions to sit with because the ego thrives on attachment. Attachment to ideas, to identities, to outcomes. It's always trying to manipulate and control reality to ensure its own survival. But the more you try to control life, the more you suffer. Life is not something that can be controlled. It's something to be lived, to be experienced fully, in the present moment. And the moment you let go of this need to control, something incredible happens. You access a level of freedom and peace that the ego could never provide. One of the most profound practices for surrendering the ego is to cultivate what I call radical acceptance. This means accepting everything as it is, without resistance. This includes accepting your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances, and even the ego itself. The ego often tries to resist or reject what it doesn't like. It wants to fix, change, or avoid uncomfortable situations or emotions. But when you practice radical acceptance, you stop fighting with reality. You stop trying to make things different than they are. And in that space of acceptance, you find peace. But here's the deeper wisdom. Surrender doesn't mean passivity. It means alignment. When you surrender the ego's need to control, you align yourself with the flow of life, with the intelligence of the universe. You stop trying to force things to happen according to your limited perspective, and instead, you allow life to unfold naturally. This doesn't mean you stop taking action or making choices. It means that your actions and choices come from a place of inner alignment, rather than from fear or attachment. Let me ask you, what would it feel like to let go of control? What would it feel like to trust life completely? These are questions that can guide you into deeper surrender. And when you begin to experience this surrender, you'll notice something profound. Life becomes easier. The struggles you once faced, the constant push and pull of trying to make things happen, begin to dissolve. You realize that life is not something happening to you, it's something happening through you. And when you're aligned with the flow of life, everything becomes more harmonious. But here's the paradox. The ego can never fully surrender itself. The very nature of the ego is to hold on. So what's required here is a shift in identity. You must stop identifying with the ego and start identifying with the awareness behind the ego. This is where meditation and mindfulness practices can be incredibly helpful. When you meditate, you observe your thoughts without attaching to them. You begin to notice that there is a space between you and the thoughts, the ego. The more you rest in this space of awareness, the less power the ego has over you. And as the ego's grip loosens, something magical happens. you begin to experience yourself as the flow of life itself. You start to see that you are not a separate being struggling to survive in a hostile world. You are the universe, expressing itself in human form. This is a profound shift in consciousness, and it's one of the key milestones on the path to spiritual awakening. When you surrender the ego, you open yourself up to the infinite intelligence of the universe. You become a vessel for divine will rather than a puppet of the ego's desires. This is true freedom. Freedom from suffering. Freedom from fear. Freedom from the constant need to control. And it's accessible to you right now, in this very moment. All it requires is a willingness to let go. But here's the question. Are you ready to surrender? Are you ready to trust the flow of life and step into the fullness of who you really are? As we move into this final phase of our spiritual awakening journey, we come to the most profound and awe-inspiring realization of all, the understanding that you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe itself. Every step, every milestone we've discussed so far has been leading to this moment, the dissolution of the illusion of separation and the awakening to the truth of oneness. At this point, we've already begun to loosen the grip of the ego, we've integrated our shadow, and we've surrendered the need for control. These steps have cleared the way for the ultimate realization, which is that the boundaries you believed existed between yourself and the external world are not real. They are constructs of the mind created by the ego to maintain the illusion of individuality. But once you see through these constructs, once you experience the truth beyond the ego, you begin to understand that there is no separation between you and the universe. You are the same energy, the same consciousness, expressing itself in different forms. Let's explore this deeper. From a young age, we're taught to see ourselves as separate beings living in a world of other separate beings. We believe that I am over here and you are over there. We believe that the earth, the sky, the trees, and the stars are all out there, separate from us. But what if I told you that this perception of separateness is just an illusion, a kind of mirage created by the mind? What if the truth is that there is no out there at all? What if everything you experience, your thoughts, your emotions, the people you meet, the world around you, is all happening within the vast field of consciousness that you are? This is not just a philosophical idea, it's a direct experience that many people have during deep states of meditation or moments of spiritual insight. In these moments, the boundaries between self and other, inside and outside, begin to dissolve. You might experience a profound sense of unity with everything around you, the trees, the sky, the people walking by. All of it feels like an extension of yourself, like waves arising in the same ocean of consciousness. Let me ask you, have you ever had a moment where you felt completely at one with everything? Maybe while watching a sunset, or sitting by the ocean, or staring up at the stars. In that moment, time seems to stop. The mind becomes silent, and there is only the pure experience of being. This is a glimpse of the truth of oneness. It's a moment when the veil of separation lifts and you experience life as it truly is, whole, interconnected, and infinite. But here's the thing. This experience of oneness is not something that only happens in rare moments of transcendence. It's the fundamental truth of your existence. It's always there, underneath the noise of the mind, the distractions of the ego, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. The journey of spiritual awakening is about making this experience of oneness your living reality. It's about shifting from the perspective of the ego, which sees everything in terms of separation and duality, to the perspective of your true self, which knows that everything is interconnected, everything is one. When you begin to live from this place of oneness, everything changes. You stop seeing other people as separate from you. Instead, you see them as reflections of yourself. You realize that the same consciousness that flows through you flows through them. This realization naturally leads to greater compassion, empathy, and love. You begin to understand that to harm another is to harm yourself. To judge yourself and to love another is to love yourself. This is why the realization of oneness is the key to true peace, both personally and collectively. When we live from the perspective of separation, we are constantly in conflict with ourselves, conflict with others, conflict with the world. But when we awaken to the truth of oneness, we see that there is nothing to fight against. We see that we are all part of the same whole, and that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. And just as importantly, the joy of one is the joy of all. But here's where we take it even deeper. You are not just one with other people. You are one with the entire universe. The stars in the sky, the oceans, the mountains, the animals, all of it is you. The same energy that creates galaxies flows through your veins. The same consciousness that gives life to the earth is the consciousness that breathes through you. This is the ultimate realization of spiritual awakening. You are the universe experiencing itself in human form. And when you truly grasp this, not just intellectually but experientially, something incredible happens. You begin to live in harmony with the flow of life. You stop resisting what is because you understand that everything, even the challenges, are part of the greater unfolding of the universe. You begin to trust life completely, knowing that you are not separate from it. You are it. So let me ask you this. What if you stop seeing yourself as a separate individual, struggling to survive in a vast, indifferent universe? What if you realized that you are the universe, and everything that happens is an expression of your own consciousness? This is the final milestone on the path to spiritual awakening, and it's not something that can be grasped by the mind. It has to be experienced, lived, and embodied. As you move forward from here, remember that the journey doesn't end with this realization. It's just the beginning. Once you awaken to the truth of oneness, the real work begins, living from that place day by day, moment by moment, and allowing this profound truth to transform every aspect of your life. And so I leave you with one final question. What will your life look like if you truly lived as the universe, expressing itself through you?